All right, welcome. We're coming to you live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Thanks for tuning in. You're, of course, watching The Week Ahead with myself, Liezle Wilson. Let's take a look at your headlines before we delve into your top stories for today. While South Africa has recorded 20,713 new COVID-19 infections in the latest 24-hour cycle, another 35 people have died from COVID-19 related complications. It puts the national death toll at 90,297. While the Free State Police investigates a case of culpable homicide following a fatal crash of the R457 in the Free State in which 14 people have perished. Right, those are a look at your headlines. Your top story today, the National Institute for Communicable Diseases says South Africa has recorded 20,713 new COVID-19 infections in the latest reporting 24-hour cycle. Another 35 people have thus died from COVID-19 related complications. It now puts the national death toll at 90,297. Gauteng still accounts for most of the new coronavirus cases, but is now closely followed by KwaZulu-Natal, the Western Cape, and the Eastern Cape provinces. Minister of Health Dr. Joe Phaahla calls for responsible behaviour and stronger compliance with COVID-19 prevention and treatment protocols during the festive season. This as the National Coronavirus Command Council retains the lockdown restrictions at adjusted level 1. Well, for more on this, we are now joined by the Minister of Health, Dr. Joe Phaahla. A very good afternoon to you, Minister. Thanks for joining us here on the Week in Review.
Well, good afternoon to your viewers. And thank you very much for having us on your show this afternoon.
Minister, it's already the festive season. People are obviously traveling to different parts of different provinces. I mean, what are the safety measures to prevent a possible surge in COVID-19 infections during this busy period?
Well, again, in terms of the definite risk for this period, one would start with traveling. Traveling presents a major risk because while we travel every day, but this time of the year, there's big numbers of travelers in various modes of transport, in the taxis, buses, trains, and of course the planes are relatively much more controlled. But the problem there is overcrowding in the transport, and also because unlike commuting to work, which would usually be short travel from home to work, 30 minutes, 1 hour. This is long traveling. So people are in this mode of transport together for long periods. And if just one person carries the virus, if no one is wearing, or if people are not wearing masks, no ventilation, too much congestion, 4 or 5 hours or even longer together, then it's almost definite that you just need one person. Even if it's in a bus, this is going to happen. So that's the immediate first risk. So we would really urge both the managers of transport and the passengers to really take precaution. And of course, when you arrive at your destinations, it's family gatherings, hugging, kissing, gatherings around meals, unvaccinated people, and so on. Then there's festivities together, especially indoors, loud music, gatherings, and singing, dancing, hugging again. All those at the end, the very close proximity, especially indoors, is just a high risk. So those are the things which we basically just say people should take care of. We've been there before. This is our second festive season in this situation. We just hope that people remember what are the best things to do.
I mean, Minister, the Command Council's decided to not put the country into a hard lockdown. And recently, South Africa has been removed from the red list travel bans as well from various countries. I mean, would it be wise to put the country in lockdown and close our borders while we have been removed from these red lists? What are your thoughts on that?
We've been here before, as I've said. We started last year in March, had a hard lockdown, managed to delay the curve. And then, of course, when we thought we were out of it, the second wave came into the scene and pushed us, just before Christmas last year. and then went through the whole festive, and we came back in January, and that's when provinces like Gauteng really, got the big spike of the second wave, way right up to February. So we have done a lot of things in terms of controls. We believe that where we are now, we have learned a lot in terms of things which can be sustainable. We paid a heavy price in terms of delaying the curve last time, a lot of pressure on the economy, a lot of job losses. We have now, at least, unlike last Christmas, we now have vaccines also, which we didn't have last Christmas. So this time is not just prevention in terms of avoiding crowds, sanitizing, masks and ventilation. We also have vaccines. So we are saying that, therefore, with all the lessons we have learned, there is no reason to really close our borders. We can manage this together because the virus is already across all our for instance, Southern African countries. So we just need to do the proper things of managing, doing what we can do to prevent, including the vaccination.
Absolutely. And we're looking at the non-pharmaceutical methods and vaccinations that are also key in avoiding hospitalization during this festive season. I wonder if you could outline the department's plan to encourage people to vaccinate during this time to avoid, overcrowding in hospitals. Also, is the department going to use this opportunity to vaccinate people in public places like malls or on roadblocks, etc.?
We want to do so. We are talking with our colleagues in all the provinces that we should, especially where people will be gathered, especially in the malls. Let's have a lot more of pop-up sites, all the popular spots where people will be shopping. And of course, and on the roadsides, at the toll gates, roadblocks. It's quite a balancing act because we're doing this also at the same time that the numbers are high, as much as we don't have the high figures of the previous wave and the other two waves in terms of hospital admissions. But the fact that the numbers of infections are high, even if it's a small percentage, they are rising every day, as we reported yesterday. The numbers in hospitals have been rising up to sometime about 70% because of the fact that we come from a low base, where there's some COVID wards were almost empty by the end of November. By the middle of November, towards the end of November, many of the provinces' COVID wards were already empty. So as we now got into December with this wave, we have to now, even people who have been, who had taken leave, asked to come back. So we balance between making sure that the demand in the health facilities are catered for, because it's the same health workers who also help us with the vaccination, although we do have additional, with the help of the Solidarity Fund and also private providers, there's additional capacity in the vaccination. So we have to balance all that. So there will be facilities, pop-up sites in the malls and other congregate areas, but we will not have a full capacity because of the fact that the infections are also rising.
Oh, Minister, let me conclude this conversation perhaps by just looking at the trends emerging regarding this new variant within our country specifically. Can you walk us through what the rate of infections are, the rate of hospitalizations, and even the mortality and recovery rates at this point as we head into the festive season?
Well, the infection rates are very high, as you would have seen over if you look at the last 7 days, you see figures rising up to some days upwards of 20,000 infections per day on average, fluctuating sometimes 26,000, 24,000, 21, 20,000. Some days, especially on weekends, maybe 19. But it's all on average of daily rates of about 20,000. Still with Gauteng leading, it has come down from the highs of 11,000 per day in Gauteng to 8,000. Now we're looking at just over 5,500. But as that is happening, the average numbers still remain high because those numbers are now being displaced into other provinces, into KZN, into Western Cape, number 3, Eastern Cape, and then all the other provinces rising. In terms of hospitalization as well, as I said, we started from a low base, but increasingly rising. We're sitting, as of yesterday, just under 7,000 people in hospital from the lows of just over 1,000, 2,000 in hospital, now sitting just under 7,000. We still have good spare capacity, but the demand is rising. But what is at least encouraging is the fact that we still see, even in hospitals, a lot of milder illness, with few people needing ICU and oxygen and ventilators. So those are the kind of scenarios. But again, we really want to say, while this is somehow, encouraging that we may go through, the big thing is really, as long as the numbers are rising, it can be too much pressure on our health services and our health workers. So we really urge people, again, wherever you can find a place where there is vaccination, if you don't know, find out from your nearest health service provider. And again, also avoid all the things which are risky, more especially when you have parties and festivities. Please do it outdoors and limit the numbers.
Well, Minister, it's certainly going to be a very intense and busy period for us all. Thank you very much for joining us here today on the Weekend Review and for your time. Again, Dr. Joe Phaahla, Minister of Health, calling for responsible behavior during this festive season. With the latest results from the National Institute for Communicable Diseases, saying South Africa has now recorded 20,730 new COVID-19 infections. Within the latest reporting 24-hour cycle, another 35 people having died from COVID-19 related complications. Again, thank you very much to the Minister for making time to chat to us today. Let's take a quick ad break. Of course, we've got more news and updates on the other side. You're watching the Weekend Review with myself, Liezle Wilson. Right, welcome back. You are, of course, tuned into the Weekend Review with myself, Liezle Wilson. Continuing with more news making headlines this week. We had seen Justice and Correctional Services Minister Ronald Lamola calling for calm following the judgment of the High Court in Pretoria that ruled that former President Jacob Zuma's release from prison last month on medical parole was unlawful and ordered that he be sent back to jail to complete his 15-month jail term. The Correctional Services Department have vowed to seek leave to appeal the decision of the court, which nullifies the department's former Commissioner Arthur Fraser's decision to grant Zuma medical parole. Meanwhile, Zuma's legal team have already filed its application for leave to appeal the judgment. Zuma's jailing in July led to the vandalism and looting of businesses in KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng provinces. More than 300 people were, of course, killed in that unrest. But to unpack this a little bit more, we will bring in legal analyst Mpumelelo Zikalala. Very good afternoon to you. Thank you for joining us here today.
Good afternoon to you, and also good afternoon to your viewers.
Mpumelelo, let's jump straight into it. Judge Elias Matojani, of course, stating that nothing that Arthur Fraser relied on asserts that Zuma's terminally ill and requirements that should be met before medical parole is in fact granted. I wonder, based on this judgment, please take us through the process of granting a prisoner medical parole.
Let's remember that that process is governed by the Correctional Services Act, which is very clear and prescriptive. So then it says, after you've made your application, then we take it to our own medical experts as correctional services who are going to further assess you. And then based on that, they're looking for two things which must be existent in those reports. The first one is that you must be physically incapacitated. And the second one is that the nature of your illness must be so severe to such an extent that we can't take care of you inside the prison cells or within the prison facilities. It is much better off that you go at home because they would have a better way of managing your illness. It is not because you are suffering from comorbidities in which medication, for example, could be taken while you are inside the prison term. So that was the basis of or the bone of contention in this particular matter, because the court is then saying, yes, you do have the power to grant the medical parole. Legally, the Correctional Services Act allows you to do that. Procedurally, you follow that particular the procedure which is prescribed. However, the reasons for granting the parole are not in line with they do not follow the cause, which is the long and short of it. So you have medical experts that have advised you against it, and that based on your own violation, not backed up by any medical evidence, you've decided that you're going to grant this person medical parole. Hence, they are saying it is unlawful because it is not in line in terms of Section 33 of our Constitution.
All right, so in the same breath then, I mean, in a statement, the former president's lawyers argue that sending him back to prison is tantamount to the death sentence, which was abolished in South Africa back in 1995. I mean, is there any truth to this in relation to his case as we speak?
I wouldn't say it's a death sentence, but I would state this. It's almost as if he's been punished again, or there's almost a sense of double jeopardy in this case. Let's remember, he did not walk out of prison. So he didn't say, after I've submitted my application, I'm then walking out regardless of what you are saying. He submitted an application which was then evaluated by a person in power or in terms of making that particular decision. That person is the one that just made the mistake. Now, you can't punish the former president for the mistake of Mr. Fraser. Actually, what should happen is that the court should have then taken a step back and then said, what do we mean when you say a person has been arrested? They've been deprived of their freedom, they can't go out. In this case, were you allowed to go to Dubai for 3 months, for example? If the answer is no, because you're still under medical parole, you're still under the care and supervision of correctional services, you're still detained. So if you're still detained, why then take you back to prison just because you want the man of detainment to be the one in which you are incarcerated, you are kept in a jail cell? What are we trying to achieve or hoping to achieve in all of this? But the most important question is then this. I didn't take the decision myself, which was someone else that took it. I mustn't be punished for the mistakes of Mr. Fraser. I think if the affidavit or the submissions of the former president are within that particular line, then the chances of success at the SAA could be greater.
All right, so Zuma's lawyers and the Department of Correctional Services believe that another court will come to a different conclusion. I wonder, in your opinion, how possible is this? And perhaps what does all this mean for the current order that the former president must, in fact, go back to jail then?
Let's separate the issues. In terms of the correctness of the decision of Mr. Fraser, I do not think the SCA is going to come to a different conclusion. It is unlawful. It does not go in line with Section 33. However, with the taking of the former president back to jail and with the cost of this particular application being split between Mr. Fraser and the former president, I think the court on that part, those two experts will come to a different conclusion. Because as stated earlier, Mr. Zuma can't be punished for the mistakes of Mr. Fraser. Mr. Fraser had a duty to take a decision which is in line with Section 33, which is lawful, reasonable, and procedurally fair. He failed in that duty, but we can't punish Mr. Zuma on that one. Secondly, Mr. Zuma needed to come to court in order to state his case. He's not the one who is the core instigator or institutional, the person that started these particular proceedings. He needed to come to court to defend his rights. In fact, if court orders are ordered against him, it's going to prevent other people from saying, I want to go to court and defend myself, because they're going to say, what if I lose? I'm going to be slapped with a court order that I can't be able to pay at the end of the day. So in terms of the decision of Mr. Fraser, the SCA probably would say a Gauteng Higher Court were correct. In terms of Mr. Zuma going back to jail and paying the cost, I think they'll come to a different conclusion on that one.
All right, Mpumelelo, obviously also Zuma's lawyers pointing out that Judge Matojane did not take into account the evidence that showed that South Africa lacked a proper correctional facility to accommodate the former president's medical needs as well. I mean, is this true? And if it is, then what will happen if a higher court also sends him to jail? I mean, where to from here going forward?
But you see, on that one, the Act is very clear. It distinguishes between two things. One, you are physically incapacitated to take care of yourself. The second one is that there are no medical facilities, or the nature of the illness in which you suffer from cannot be taken care of while you're in prison. So those are the two criteria. Not that you have comorbidities. There are many other people that will be in prison that will have comorbidities, that would need to take medication on a daily basis. It can't mean that all those individuals have to be sent out on parole. However, with these two clear defined situations in which a person is sent out on medical parole, it is clear what should happen. The second safeguard is those medical experts who are going to sit down, assess a case-by-case basis and come to a conclusion. In this case, they sat down and they said no. So if they are saying we have certain institutions which are not capable of taking care of the inmates and their comorbidities, I do not think they are correct. The current legislative process and the procedures that are there are more than adequate to make sure that everyone who applies for medical parole and qualifies for it will get reprieve on that one. But if you don't qualify, you should stay in prison.
All right, just quickly, Mpumelelo, whilst I have you, I know that the previous question was supposed to be the last one, but I'm just looking at the National Commission of Correctional Services. Arthur Fraser reportedly released former President Jacob Zuma on medical parole against the advice of the Medical Parole Board. Obviously on the grounds that Zuma was terminally ill. But I mean, based on this, what could be the implications of this should he now go back to jail? Just in conclusion.
The implications are that you may see a number of other people that were released previously. Maybe their cases will be reviewed. The instances in which the Medical Parole Board has given a decision, the Correctional Services Commissioner, in terms of overpowering or overruling those particular decisions, could then be called back to question. But what the court is trying to say with this judgment is saying, follow the rules and the procedures as they are laid down in the law. If you are in a position of power and you need to take a decision, listen to those who are more qualified than you in that particular field and use their reasoning when you are saying yes or if you are saying no. You can't simply ignore what they are telling you and say, just because I have the power, this is what I'm going to use.
All right, Mpumelelo, always a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for joining us here once again. This week, we've seen Justice and Correctional Services Minister Ronald Lamola calling for calm following the judgment of the High Court in Pretoria that ruled that former President Jacob Zuma's release from prison last month on medical parole was unlawful and ordered that he be sent back to jail to complete his 15-month jail term. Again, legal analyst Mpumelelo Zikalala, thank you very much for your time unpacking what that latest judgment entails. Let's take another quick break. We'll be back after this. Right, you're watching the Weekend Review with myself, Liezle Wilson. In other news this week, global ratings agency Fitch has moved South Africa's foreign credit rating from negative outlook to stable. This announcement was made this week, and Fitch says that a stable outlook was due to South Africa's fast-paced economic recovery. But for more on this, let's bring in Dr. Azwi Nemushungwa, who is an economics lecturer at the University of Venda. Very good afternoon to you, Dr. Azwi. Thanks for joining us here.
Afternoon to you and to listeners outside.
Must congratulate you on becoming a doctor as well before we delve in. Thanks for flying the flag high there. I think the first question, looking at this announcement by Fitch and the implications thereof of moving the country's outlook from negative to stable. I mean, what does this imply going forward for us?
So for Fitch's announcement to to move the country from a negative to a stable outlook, it simply means that though we're still in a junk status or what we call the non-investment grade, so it sends a positive message to investors that now, though we're still a country that is on the junk status, but for the fact that now our rating cannot has a possibility that we won't be downgraded likely in the near future or within 6 to 24 months. So that will send a positive message to investors to come and invest in South Africa.
You know, Dr. Azwi, I wonder, as we look at the overall ratings of South Africa at large, I mean, is there a possibility that the country may be hiked to a positive outlook in the near future? And if not so, what do you think could be the possible causes going forward based on our economic plans and recovery as we're speaking right now?
So looking at the situation that South African economy is at now, so somebody can just say there's no possibility in the near future that we can move from this position of a non-investment grade to a positive grade. There are many factors that are attributing to this. Number one, our economy is growing, though we talk of a recovery, but the recovery is still very low, especially due to this pandemic that is going on. We also look at the issue of the high debt level in South Africa. So it's another factor that's weighing negatively on the economy. Some of these factors that we can also look at, there are so many challenges factored to the growth of the economy of South Africa. But I can say this too, the high debt that this country is facing, and also the issue of inequality in South Africa. So we still have this large gap of inequality in South Africa. Having these factors, we can say that we cannot expect the economy to move from a stable to what you call a positive, where we are now in what you call the investment grade position.
Well, absolutely, Dr. Azwi. I wonder, as we also look at, what a BB rating implies for South Africa. I mean, S&P ranks South Africa on the same level as Fitch, but with a negative outlook. Given the triple threats of poverty, inequality and unemployment that you spoke of and some of the other factors at large, I mean, what does this also imply for the country?
So the BB rating simply means that the country is now put on a 3-step lower than what you call the investment level, where the investors all over the world can trust South Africa as an economy that they can feel safe to invest. But at least it's only a 3-step lower, unlike when we are maybe put on level C or level D, which is the lowest level. So being put on level B, so that sends a slight message or a slight positive message to investors, though only those who are risk averse, who are risk neutral want to come. But those who are risk averse, they will still dare to come to South Africa.
All right, Dr. Azwi, I want to thank you once again for your time, for unpacking that for us. Again, congratulations on achieving the prefix of doctor there. Really, really proud of you. That's where we're going to leave the conversation with Dr. Azwi. Again, she was just unpacking global ratings agency Fitch having moved South Africa's sovereign credit rating from a negative outlook to stable. Again, giving us an overview of the implications this has on the country at large. As we heard, this announcement was made this week. Again, Dr. Azwi Nemushungwa is an economics lecturer at the University of Venda. And that's where we're going to leave it for you today. As always, it has been an absolute pleasure. We'll catch you tomorrow for a look at the week ahead. But from myself, Liezle Wilson and the team, until tomorrow, it's goodbye for now.